Roman Torchwick and Mercury Black, two characters who aren't really on the right side of the law, neither of which have their semblances, and honestly, they don't seem too fond of each other. So let's have them fight it out 1v1 in the next exhibition match of the Phoenix Festival Tournament. Using Amity Coliseum as the stage, these two will fight to a full or a break with no possibilities of a ring out. I'll take a look at their weapons and their fighting styles. Can't really look at their semblances, considering neither of which have been revealed in the RWBY series as of yet, but I'll go over how I think this fight would go and ultimately determine who I think would be the likely victor. But ultimately, my opinion is only a single vote, and the results will be determined by all of you in the comments below. Make sure to comment who you think would win and give a brief reason as to why. Weapon advantage, overall experience, etc. Before we get into analyzing these characters though, let's go over the results of our last fight between Maria Calavera and Pyrrha Nikos. In that video, I said that Maria would be the victor due to her semblance of preflexes and her overall experience as the Grim Reaper having an advantage over Pyrrha. Now Pyrrha could get the surprise on Maria using her semblance of polarity manipulating Maria's weapons and has a fair amount of skill herself, but ultimately Maria would be able to adapt to this. Her preflexes realizing when Pyrrha is manipulating her weapons and be able to react accordingly, not to mention rearming herself with her gravity dust, etc. But in the comments below that video, by a slight majority, people did say that Pyrrha would be the winner. Just the overall advantage of her semblance of polarity, being able to manipulate the metal in Maria's weapons, would be enough to beat Maria, not to mention Pyrrha having enough experience herself, etc. Now, I still hold that Maria would win, that Pyrrha's semblance isn't as strong as some people give it credit for, but in these fights, majority rules, so Pyrrha Nikos is the winner. But now, getting into today's combatants, Mercury Black and Roman Torchwick. Let's start with Mercury Black, a character who honestly, in my opinion, hasn't had a chance to show his full fighting capabilities on screen yet. There are two fights where he did get to show a decent amount of his fighting capabilities, and that was back in the Vital Festival Tournament in Volume 3, once when he fought against Coco and Yatsuhashi, and again against Yang. He threw the fight against Yang, wanting to lose to make Yang seem like a terrible person and cause panic in the overall stadium, and then against Coco and Yatsuhashi, well, Cinder chose them as opponents for Mercury and Emerald because she knew they would have the clear advantage, Mercury being faster and Emerald with her semblance of illusions. Coco and Yatsuhashi just didn't stand a chance, even though they are extremely strong opponents. But regardless of his skills not fully being shown on screen, Mercury has been shown to be very skilled when it comes to close quarters combat. Definitely where he feels most comfortable, utilizing both his arms and most importantly his legs, his prosthetic legs made of metal, which I'm assuming would hit harder than flesh and bone in combat. It's a lot for an opponent to keep up with, having punches and kicks rapidly thrown at you, because Mercury is incredibly fast, both with his attacks and in mobility. He's able to move and get in close to opponents quicker than a lot of opponents could probably react to. Not to mention being able to move around opponents very quickly in close quarters, it would be a lot to keep up with. But Mercury is also skilled at long range too, thanks to his weapons of Talaria. Similar to Yang's Emberselica, that his boots are essentially shotgun-style weapons. And it's unclear as to how this is added, but he is able to add wind dust to these bullets, whether that's through his prosthetic legs or an inherent ability of Talaria themselves. It's unclear, but due to this capability, Mercury can essentially create a storm of bullets that will rain down on an opponent. And honestly, I'm not 100% sure how this could actually work, how Mercury is able to manipulate so many bullets and have them land precisely on an opponent, considering he doesn't have his semblance, whether there's maybe gravity dust involved or wind dust has some other properties with Talaria or something like that. But regardless, Mercury is capable of this, and that is something that is often a finisher for most fights that he comes up against. So Mercury is definitely a skilled opponent. Not to mention, he also has some pretty impressive feats under his belt, like, I don't know, killing his father, Marcus Black, who is supposedly an extremely skilled assassin that Cinder came to find, but found him dead because of Mercury, someone who he trained to be capable of such things. So Mercury is definitely a speedy opponent, and would be a tricky one for most people to come up against. But moving on to his opponent in this match, Roman Torchwick is definitely a character I think can keep up with Mercury's speed of attacks. Maybe not his speed when it comes to mobility, but when it comes to blocking, parrying, and counterattacking, Roman has a lot of speed in his own right. Now, Roman is a character who pretty much fights exclusively with his weapon rather than fighting close combat, or hand-to-hand combat, I should say. way. His weapon, Melodic Cudgel, is a cane that is also a cannon. It fires bullets that are seemingly stronger than any other bullets we have seen in the RWBY series. Seemingly to be infused with fire dust, causing an explosion when they make contact, this weapon has very strong firing range. But the fights that we've seen Roman in particular, in Volume 1, at the finale, when Roman fought against Blake and Sun at the same time at the docks, Roman's fighting capabilities, the way that he was able to block both Blake's attacks and Sun's attacks when Sun was fighting with his gunchucks, the amount of bullets and attacks, strikes coming at Roman, with Sun wielding two weapons that have like multiple hits coming in them as he's swinging them around, Roman had a single cane and was able to block every single shot that was coming from Sun. Not to mention he was able to counterattack against Blake, and the speed that this man has when he's blocking, it's honestly surprising, and I don't know if we've seen someone actually match that in the RWBY series. He was also laughing during this fight, so he was enjoying himself while doing this. He didn't seem to be struggling. Like, his speed can't be underestimated, and I think a lot of people underestimate him a little bit. Simply because in Volume 2, well, Blake kind of did body him. Roman is very susceptible to surprise attacks, especially when it comes to dust clones like Blake had. In the fight that he fought against Blake and Sun in Volume 1, he was reacting to Blake's clones. Whenever Blake would use her clone to dodge out of the way, he would attack the clone and then attack her, strike back, not give Blake a chance to hit him. But when it came to the dust clones, well, the fire one exploded, sent him flying backwards, something that he didn't expect, because when he's reacting that fast, it seems as though he can't counter-react or stop his strike before it hits that, because he also had trouble when it came to the ice that froze his Melodic Cudgel in place, and then Blake was able to take him out. So he does struggle against things like that, but Mercury, I don't think, will have those capabilities of making dust clones himself, so he won't have to worry about that portion of it at least. And the final fight where we got to see Roman display his fighting capabilities was in Volume 3 against RWBY, who was utilizing her speed during this fight, and Roman was able to keep up with it. I would say that Roman definitely would have won that fight if not for the unfortunate griffin that ate him, which I still firmly believe Roman survived because the griffin survived the ship, made an entire video on that, but Roman also displayed another skill that he has with his weapon. He was able to fire a bullet so it kind of floated in front of him. He was able to grab it with the hook portion of Melodic Cudgel and sweep it outwards, creating an AoE attack rather than a pinpointed attack, and that is very useful. That allows him to keep up with speedier opponents who he knows what direction they're coming from, etc. Not to mention, it's also been shown that Roman is kind of a sniper as well. In Volume 1, at the docks, he was able to snipe RWBY with his cannon, which seems like it should be a weapon that's not very accurate, from quite a distance away. Not to mention also using the cane to hook RWBY from a distance away in Volume 2 as well. Roman definitely has some capabilities, even though he just has a cane that doesn't seem to be having that many uses. Roman can definitely put it to use. So how exactly do I think this fight would go? Well, Mercury, starting off, would probably be quite a bit overconfident, thinking that Roman is just some 2-bit criminal from Vale. So he would charge in close range, thinking that he could just knock Roman out and get an easy win. But to his surprise, Roman would be able to parry and block pretty much everything that Mercury could throw at him. Not to mention being able to counterattack at that. With the speed of Mercury's attacks, he would definitely land a couple of hits against Roman, but with the speed that Roman is able to block and counterattack, there'd be just as many hits dealt to Mercury as well. It's difficult to say who would have the advantage close range, and realizing this, Mercury would probably decide to make this a long-range battle instead. Even though he's more comfortable at close range with his mobility, he'd be able to get away from Roman, and Roman wouldn't be able to keep up with him. Even if he tried to use the hook from his cane to sweep Mercury's legs, Mercury would probably be able to dodge, and Mercury would be able to make it a long-range battle. At which point he could start firing wind dust bullets at Roman, and Roman, he's not as fast as mobile as Mercury, would have to be left to parry and block rather than being able to dodge all that well. This would give Mercury time to start setting up the wind dust bullet storm that he displayed against Yang. Roman, of course, would start firing bullets from his Melodic Cudgel, which might initially take Mercury by surprise. He might take a glancing blow here or there, but ultimately Mercury would be able to dodge most of them and set up the full storm, which he could bring down on Roman. Now this is a finishing move, but against Roman I don't think it would be, because Roman, using the skill that he displayed at the end of Volume 3, where he was able to sweep one of his bullets from Melodic Cudgel outwards, creating a wave of fire dust, if he was able to do that upwards, not to mention if he was able to do that consecutively, like 3 or 4 bullets at a time, creating a pretty nice blanket of fire dust, he could block a decent portion, if not a majority, of the wind dust bullets that would be raining down on him, giving him time to dodge out of the way and at least lessening the hit that he would take from that attack. It would still deal a decent amount of damage, but Roman dodging out of the way would give Mercury an opportunity to start firing more bullets and deal more blows against Roman. But the key turning point in this fight would be when Roman summons the Griffin to his side, and that takes over the fight against Mercury. But then again, Mercury could just awaken the Sharingan, which, if you guys didn't know, Mercury is voiced by the same person who voices Sasuke Uchiha in the dub of Naruto, so Mercury awakening the Sharingan would pretty much end the fight right there. He could mind control the Griffin and just put some genjutsu on Roman Torchwick and the fight would be over there. But anyways, regardless of these other things that might interfere, Mercury would just have the advantage over Roman. There would be damage dealt on both sides, but Mercury would come out the victor. Though I think a couple times out of 10, Roman could come out the victor as well. And this is with no biomes in play. If biomes were in play, though, I think Roman actually has the advantage. He's not opposed to running and hiding behind trees or things to get away from bullets that Mercury has, using his lying and cheating, etc. And from the cover of the different areas in the biomes, whether it's the urban biome, forest biome, etc., he could use the Melodic Cudgel to make some strikes against Mercury, make him more frustrated, possibly even hooking his legs at some point. And Mercury, if he's not able to keep up with that, would get a little bit more confused. His weapons or firing from Teleria, especially the Wind Dust Storm, if Roman was hiding, it wouldn't be as accurate, wouldn't be able to deal as much damage. And I think Roman has a lot more of an even advantage when it comes to having biomes in play. Ultimately, though, Mercury would be declared the winner in my opinion, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. A lot of people thought that Mercury would just have a clean win against Roman, and although I do think he wins more often than not, Roman is not one that should be underestimated. He does have a lot of fighting capabilities and experience in and of himself. So let me know what your thoughts in the comments are below. Now, for the next fight of the Phoenix Festival tournament, we are going to have Glinda Goodwitch versus Cinder Fall, with no magic in play. Cinder's not using her maiden powers, and we're going to assume that she has just a regular human arm instead of her Grim arm, so not going to have any of those powers in there either. But she's still going to have the fighting capabilities all the way up to Volume 7. I'll do my best to differentiate out when she's using her semblance versus the magic powers, etc. And similarly, Glinda's not going to be conjuring any storms. It's a bit unclear whether that was magic or just utilizing dust, but still, Glinda's not going to be using those capabilities. Overall, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more matches to come in the future, more RWBY theories, more RWBY content, etc. Join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Tweet me at Phoenix Knight 7, Discord link in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.